What happens when law, business, and life collide? Each week on Lead Counsel, your host Tom Tona will take a deep dive into topics related to the law, the business of law, and life. There will be insightful discussions with industry insiders, experts, and thought leaders making significant contributions and meaningful differences in their fields of expertise. Tom is the founder and managing attorney at TonaLaw. He has been a practicing attorney since 1994 and the leader of TonaLaw since it opened in 2001. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with free information on law and the business of law, and to give you actionable tools related to each of these areas. Now, here's Tom.
Hey, what's going on, man? Welcome to the Lead Counsel podcast. I'm here with Juliet, and my guest today is none other than Jay Ruane. Jay, what's going on, buddy?
Not much. I'm enjoying this beautiful day, and I'm happy to spend some time with y'all.
Same, man. I've been waiting to get you on. I have the intro here, and you're a serial entrepreneur, which I kind of want to dig into all of the stuff you got your hands into, because I share that same brain. And so it can be torturous for everybody around us. And I kind of want to know how you deal with it. So real quick, just to give a little background to the listeners, you've been running Ruane Law for 20 years, profitable, multi-seven-figure practice. You're a Amazon best-selling author of Tiger Tactics and then the CEO edition of Tiger Tactics, right? Which I've read both. They're excellent. Love those books.
Thank you.
And you're often speaking on management systems, digital marketing. Big thing I always relate with you was the systemization. I mean, you are like the king of systems. But then you branched out. You have a company called FirmFlex. And then you have the Criminal Mastermind, which I'm super interested in, and I want to hear about that.
Sure.
And then the law firm Blueprint, which talks about systems and scaling of law firms. So welcome to the show, my man.
I got a lot of things going on. You know, it's funny. I was just talking to my wife that I have an idea for a non-legal business, and I'm like, I got to figure out how I can make this happen. And it turns out that somebody she knows somebody who's in an ancillary business. This could be an add-on to his. So I'm like, well, maybe I can make this thing happen over the summer. And so my mind constantly is going. It never stops. It's a pain sometimes, but it's who I am. It's probably undiagnosed ADD. It's funny
because you do that show with Seth, and Seth and I joke around all the time, like that undiagnosed ADD. And Juliet sends me podcasts all the time about ADHD and ADD because it's very frequent with entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a friend of mine. A casual friend who won an Oscar a couple of years ago for best short form film. He was a writer on The Daily Show. And I only started to recognize the signs of ADD because he has it and he constantly posts reels about what's it like to operate with an ADD brain. And as I'm watching his reels that he posts, I'm like, God, that's me. That's me. Oh my God, that's me. And so I went, it was even me watching like a 30-second video that somebody else put out that got me to say, maybe I should dig a little deeper into this. I have a son who's diagnosed, and I said, wow, I'm a lot more alike with him than not. And in fact, this week it was interesting, and I don't mean to digress, but I'll start off the show with the typical ADD digression. I'm driving in the car with my son, and he connects the book, The Outsiders, with driving in a car. And I'm like, well, how can you do that? I'm like, how did your brain get there? He's like, well, I was thinking about being in a gang because I was listening to Eazy-E. And then I thought about the book, The Outsiders, that I have to read this summer for school. And then I thought about what if I were in a gang in my town? And if I were in a gang in my town, how would I get from place to place safely? I'd have to get a big car like yours. So that's why I want you to give me this car. So it went from, hey, Dad, can I have you? It went from, hey, what are you reading this summer? Outsiders, to I need you to give me a car. And I was just like, that's how your brain worked. And so it's fascinating to talk to people with an ADD brain and ask them how they got from point A to point B, because you find out how that brain works.
Yeah, I listen, I joke around. I think it could be a superpower or a curse.
Yeah.
One of the things I realized is because I do EOS. Are you on EOS, by the way?
We are on EOS at my firm,
Okay.
not in my mastermind, but my law firm, because it's got enough people who are on EOS.
Gotcha. So one of the things I realized, because I just started a software company, I have software that I built for one of my practice areas. And I was like, the only reason I'm successful in the law firm is because I have an integrator, right? Someone that can execute on my ADD ideas coming at them 2,000 miles an hour. So when I started the software thing, before I even formed the company, I was like, I need a partner, and that partner has to be an integrator, somebody who's good at execution, because that is my worst thing.
Even before I found EOS, I have 3 integrators working in my office. Basically, I've got a head of each. I've got a head of legal, I've got a head of operations, and a head of marketing. And and they filled those roles for me. And even before I knew EOS existed, it turns out that I had hired people that were naturally inclined to be integrators, because I can throw a million ideas out there, but if I don't have somebody who's actually doing that stuff. So the way we have our office set up, essentially it's 3 kind of operations, and those 3 people are on my leadership team, but I'm the only visionary.
Right. And that's why it works, right? Because you can have 1,000 ideas, but then they're executing on it.
Yeah.
So
I need somebody to make it happen.
I think it's often a curse. I mean, we're the tormented artists, man. Like, it's just that torment constantly. And it's funny because you know it when you see it in other people too, right? Like Seth and I joke around, and I'm like, you put me and him, or you and me, on a podcast scenario, the amount of words that will get spoken in that 1 hour period is like insane. It's insane. And when I listen to you, I love your podcast with him.
But, it's interesting. I started my practice with my father, as I helped him grow his practice, and then we combined forces and that type of thing. And he's neither a visionary nor an integrator. He wants to be, all he cares about is practicing law. He's 75 years old. We get in a car to drive to lunch, and he tells me about this new appellate court decision that came out. It hasn't even come across my desk yet. He's already read it. He listened to the oral arguments that are on recording, and he's figured out how he's going to make an end run around it. He loves being in that niche, right? So that's what I need to do. I need to find people that love their niches, put them and let them, just have the rapture of doing just that one thing that they love, and let me sit back and do what I love, which is sort of seeing everything and putting crazy stuff into play.
Yeah, I think that's really where it's brilliant, right? Like we have a trial attorney now. This is a legit trial assassin, right? Been doing it 35, 40 years. And I don't tell him what to do. I'm never going to tell him what to do. I said to my integrator, I go, listen, I don't hire brilliant people and then I'm going to try to micromanage them. It's just not going to work that way. So are you exclusively criminal defense at this point?
Oh, yeah. We are DUI. DUI is 50% of our practice, criminal defense the rest. I cut my teeth early on as a criminal defense lawyer in the game back in the late 90s, early 2000s. If anybody watches The Wire, that was my audience. I had a couple of local gangs, drug dealers that I was their go-to lawyer. Lower level players. My father had some of the higher level players in the market, and I had some of the younger crew members, and then they aged up and they started taking over. But I saw an end to that as the feds were arresting a lot of people, and I transitioned my practice into DUI, which for me it tickled a science part of my brain that I loved to get into. So I got deep into that area, got involved in a lot of national organizations that handle that, with tons of seminars, really learned a lot about that stuff. And then I, after, that 15-year period, I started not finding the challenge there anymore, and decided that, running a better business was going to be my challenge. And I focused on that, to let us grow.
So speaking on your DUI focus, right?
Yep.
I noticed you had put in our questionnaire that you once lost 17 DUI trials in a row.
And
that you're not embarrassed to talk about it. So I thought that was so interesting because one, I want to hear about those losses and like how that was for you. And two, I want to hear about how you reached the point of like no longer being embarrassed about it and being like, yeah, like I did that and now I'm here, and where, like, what that process was for you.
So I won't go deep into all of my losses because it'll probably wind up with me, in the corner worries. In the fetal position.
Then you won't be having a good day. Thanks, Jules.
Exactly. But no, I mean, the reality of the situation is some of those cases needed to be tried because of the facts. Some of those cases needed to be tried because of the client's history. Some of those cases needed to be tried because the prosecution wasn't giving us what we wanted. One of my cases that I lost, they were offering a ridiculous sentence because my client at the time had a prior DUI on his record with a negligent homicide. Turned out he was, this was 40 years ago. A guy in Vermont who was drunk ran across the street and got hit by my guy. My guy was sober at the time, but it was classified as an alcohol-related fatality on his motor vehicle history.
Oh my God.
So they tried. So they were offering him 5 years in jail on a subsequent, leaving a wedding DUI. And I was like, he can't do 5 years. This is a probation case. This is, and they wouldn't give it to him. So we tried the case, we lost, but he got probation from the judge. So in that respect, that was a win, right? Because that's what we
100%. Yeah. That would have been such a miscarriage of justice. It's an alcohol-related offense because the guy walking across the street was drunk.
Was the drunk, right? Exactly. My guy's stone sober. He had blood tested back then and all that stuff. But then I had another case where, the jury came back guilty so quickly they forgot to elect a foreperson. Like my guy was, it was a bad case, and my client wanted his trial. So look, the reality is you don't win cases unless you try. 100% of people who plead guilty are found guilty. And sometimes it's not what they need. They need someone to fight for them. My job is to show up and fight. I don't get paid for the win. I get paid for the fight. So with what I do, I put myself out there. A lot of people are afraid or embarrassed to talk about where they think they failed. I don't think I failed in any one of those trials. I did the best I could do. I created some novel appellate issues. I cross-examined vigorously. I represented my clients zealously. And the jury found that they proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt. I got to accept that. Does it hurt? Absolutely. Does it sting? Yeah. But I have a policy in my office that all 12 of my lawyers we ascribe to. You get 24 hours to mourn. You get 24 hours to mourn, and nobody can say boo to you during that 24-hour period. We pat you on the back. We buy you a drink. You do whatever is necessary. But then after that 24 hours, you got to get back to work. That's just the way we roll.
And all 12 of your attorneys, they try in the cases? They go on trial if needed? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's pretty rare. So like in the PI space, I had to wrap my head around not all PI lawyers that call themselves PI lawyers want to try cases, right? And I'll tell you the ripple effect of the way both social media and the mastermind stuff works. It's your fault, part of it. You and Ryan McKean. I came from a trial space. I tried a lot of cases when I was younger, but then I made the decision I wanted to transition to the business entrepreneur. And I got not complacent, but it's easy to make money and never try a case, right? But I start talking to Ryan. Ryan's telling me the story about Mikey Cruz and you, and I started to reevaluate who I was as a lawyer and what kind of services I wanted to provide to the clients. And then I transitioned us to a trial firm, right? And then I said, okay, who wants to try cases? Who doesn't want to try cases? Because this is the dividing line. And so we've had turnover related to the EOS model where my vision is crystal clear, right? So now I have a key trial person. I'm hiring a second personal injury person that will try cases if needed. And so, that's the ripple effect, right? It's like a pebble in the pond type of thing where I hear Ryan, I catch wind of you. I'm at the masterminds, John Fisher, the whole thing. Next thing I know, I'm upending everything I've done as an entrepreneur for, the last 25 years.
But see, that's the beauty of being part of a mastermind. I joined the Fireproof group for a while, and that's all PI related. I went in with an open mind. I came out of it saying, yeah, this isn't the right place for me to be. But I took a phenomenal idea from it. I tweaked it for us. And so we adapted 2 years ago, a year and a half ago now, the pod model that is very prevalent in a lot of PI firms. Yeah. And we changed it up. I made my paralegal the head of a pod, and the lawyers work for the paralegal, because that's the model that works on the criminal side. So I've got a paralegal who knows 200 cases, but my lawyers just got to know 100 each. And the paralegal is the one who's doing all the contact with the client. And so it really sort of changed, because criminal is a very lawyer intensive practice. You really can't do a lot with a paralegal because you got to show up in court, and paralegals can't do that. It's not a lot of paper. It's a lot of personality. I tell people we practice 50% law and 50% personality. It's getting those relationships with the prosecutors, the judges, and that's going to help you with your case. So, I mean, you can take a lot from a lot of different areas and find a way to make it work for you. I think that's one of the beautiful things about being exposed to new ideas.
Yeah. And listen, just going back to your 17 trials for a second, anybody that's been in the game long enough, if they don't have a really significant loss story somewhere, they're playing it way safe.
I got tons of loss stories.
No, I know. Me too. That's what I'm saying. Like, they're playing it super, super safe. Right. Yeah. So I want to shift a little bit, because I'm fascinated by masterminds. And I know you have a criminal defense specific mastermind. It's called the Criminal Mastermind, which I love. When did you start it? What was the impetus behind the Criminal Mastermind?
So I've been the guy so there's one main criminal organization nationally, the DUI Defense Lawyers Association. There's another one that I'm also a member of as well. And for 25 years, I've been going to these conferences, going to these seminars, and they never talk about business. So it was always at the dinners, in the reception hall, in the lunches, where we would talk about business. And that was my thing. I loved talking about business. So everywhere I went to one of these conferences, there'd be a table with me and a half a dozen to a dozen other trial lawyers, and we'd be talking about the business stuff. And I loved it. Anybody in that community give me a call, I tell them how I did things. And for years, I gave it all away. Like that was my thing. And I loved doing that. And my wife was on me. She kept saying, why don't you formalize this? You talk to these people all the time, but put them on a schedule. What are the things that you want in your office, and use this as a platform to bring in those speakers? So we take the tuition from the mastermind. I brought in the Ritz-Carlton last year. That's not a cheap thing, but they came in and did all about customer service last December. The year before that, I brought in a performance coach to talk about how to overcome adversity. I'm constantly bringing in the best speakers. And so that's really, it helps me, because I'm 51, I'll be 52 later this year. And the average age in my office is like 36. So I'm significantly older than my whole office. And I have a passion for my people, my team. I want to make sure that they succeed. I also want to make sure that they are secure. Even the security is more important for me than the success, I guess. And so I know that there's going to come a point about a decade from now where I say, I'm done. I'm out. I need to be able to turn my office over to my team and make sure that it continues to run, because I have, a 30-year-old employee with 3 kids, and she wants to have, the 30-year career and doesn't want to be upended. So my job is to make sure that this operation runs smoothly. So I'm using the mastermind for my own, devilish benefit of making sure I bring in the best speakers. I get the best systems. I make sure that we are running, and then everything's recorded for my team to be able to go back to that as a resource as well. And so the lawyers in my office that are going to focus on administration, they can follow up and listen to all the sessions about administration. The ones who are doing marketing, they'll have a resource as well. And so that's really the goal it's selfish. It's to help me out. But I invest in my mastermind as much as I can.
Yeah, I think, well, look, I'm a fan of masterminds, right? And everybody I talk to that does criminal defense, I'm like, look, give Jay a call. You got to join. If I'm a criminal defense lawyer, or I have a silo that's doing it, first thing I'm doing is I'm going to sign up for that mastermind. That's why I do Fisher's mastermind, which is very PI heavy. And
neither one of us are in Sicily right now, we could have been doing this in Sicily.
I know. And, but I think what you're doing, First of all, it provides a valuable service. But even when you say it's selfish, like I tell everybody, I started this podcast selfishly to record the people that I want to know and get to know that, you know, I've had a really rock star roster of 56 guests or 50 something guests. And I did do it selfishly because I get so much from these conversations. And it was born out of conversations with Juliet. Juliet's like, you guys have so much wisdom. And somebody Juliet's age typically doesn't get a seat at the tables that you and I go to dinner at and have those conversations. So I wanted to do it that way too. So there's a giving back element. I think we both kind of create content and opportunity from a place of, we wish we had this when we were 25, 27 years old.
That's, you know, honestly, that's exactly what it is. I remember, I can tell you, Tom, you know, I can remember having dropped my shingle. I was 27 years old. I quit my job as a public defender in frustration for getting passed over for a job. Walked into my father's office, who was sharing a space split up between three other lawyers. And I was like, I quit my job. And he looked at me and goes, I don't know what you're going to do. I have barely enough work for me. And he's like, but there's a broken desk in the corner. I'll ask these guys if you can use it. And so I set up an office with a cell phone, a legal pad, and a broken desk. And every night I would leave the office. I'd go to the Barnes and Noble, and I was looking for business books. I can remember reading John Morgan's book. And I can remember reading Seth Godin's Purple Cow, Never Eat Alone by Farazi. I mean, I was trying to say, how can I get these business ideas and translate them to a service practice? And so I started implementing stuff that I would learn. I'd read a ton of magazines, and basically that was my life. And as I got matured in this, and obviously the internet came along, and Facebook groups came along, I just wanted to get back to people and help them, because I've made hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of errors. And I know the value of each dollar, the value that, and if you got family, you want to be able to protect those dollars. And I was lucky at the time. I didn't have a family. Now I do. If I can help other people get through it and not make those same mistakes, we're not competing with each other. There's plenty of money and business to go around. I just want to give it away.
Yeah, that's the abundance mindset, right? Like, I think that a lot of what you say has been a common thread among everybody, right? One of the top things of the people that are running these massive firms is, I love my people. They start out with, I love my people. And I one of my motivations, same thing. Like, I'm creating a law firm that I want to be here for the people that are 10, 20, 15 years younger than me, so that when I retire, it continues on. Right. There's something there. There's systems in place. There's the right people in place. So, the same motivations are there. And I probably have made millions of dollars in mistakes if I sat down and took a pen to paper. So
you can't do that because you'll cry.
I mean, listen, I think that I always consider it as part of my extended education. Right. So if I forget how much law school was back 25 years, 30 years ago. But let's say I spent $75,000 or $100,000 on law school. My continuing education and mistakes has to be in the millions, but that's where I learn is the mistakes that I've made. Right. So
yeah, I use that as an excuse when I go to Vegas. I tell my wife, I didn't lose $5,000 playing craps. I gained $5,000 worth of education on how not to play craps.
It's a learning experience.
It's a learning experience. It's a learning mindset.
Yeah. And so does your mastermind meet quarterly? Are they virtual? It's
100% virtual, 100% virtual. We're talking about doing an in-person thing in either Key West in February as a tack on to a longstanding conference that one of my members does, all about the business of DUI law, or tacking something on in Philly in April along with another conference. But we're virtual. We meet every week. Either in session, which is twice a month, or I do office hours the other 2 weeks. So it's every week we're meeting, and people can come and go as their schedule allows. Because I got people from, East Coast to West Coast. Mm-hmm. So we set it up. So there's always something on the agenda that you can pop into, and people will come and participate, for a couple of months, and then they may get stuck on a trial. We record things. We give them access to the recordings so that they never miss anything. And for us, I mean, one of the things that's different about criminal practice as opposed to a PI, you could have a firm of 20, 30 people. Most criminal defense lawyers, it's them and a paralegal.
I know.
And so we're a community, a support community as well. Like, it's not unusual when someone's like, I got my teeth kicked in today. They'll post it in the Slack, and next thing you know, everyone will be jumping in. Oh, you're going to be fine, that type of thing. Because, it is a lonely end of the, our niche is a very lonely niche in the profession.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Jules.
At what point did you go from like a solo lawyer at a broken desk to a lawyer who now owns, like, I think, multiple businesses, the mastermind, writing books? Like, where was that kind of like entrepreneurial switch from like, okay, I'm a lawyer to I'm an entrepreneur now?
So I think, the first decade I was just focused on law. That was really it. I wanted to be the best DUI trial lawyer I could be in my state. That's when I was trying the most cases, and for a criminal defense lawyer, in Connecticut, I was trying 6 cases a year. That's a lot when most criminal defense lawyers in the state of Connecticut don't have 6 trials, period. Right. So I was doing multiple years of give me another case. I'll try it. And it was a little self-serving too, because I was going into cases and just being like, all right, I tried one. I lost it. I'm ready for the next one. I tried one. Give me the next one. And that allowed me to develop sort of a reputation of being a jerk, but also like when they would call me in, I'd be like, okay, I'm ready to go. And then, now all of a sudden the deal gets better for my clients. There was some of that. There was some of that posturing as well. But after the first decade, I sort of maxed out what I was doing on the criminal side, and an opportunity arose in our state. So I'll make the story as short as possible. So one of the things that my father was really good at is creating new case law on the appellate side. And our Connecticut Constitution is rather unique. And when I was in law school, he handled a case called Gibson versus Commissioner of Connecticut. And that, for the first time, defined that not only are people who are charged with a crime entitled to public defenders, but people who have been convicted of a crime are entitled to lawyers for post-conviction work. So if they want to bring an ineffective claim against their lawyer for in a habeas corpus proceeding, now because of my father's case law, now the state has to pick up that tab. Well, over a decade and a half of that case being the status of case, the defined case law that was controlling, something like 5,000 to 10,000 inmates filed these proceedings, and there were a tremendous backlog of cases. And so one day I was sitting and I was talking to the director of assigned counsel in the state, and I said, I could make a business out of this if you can guarantee me that I get 100 files, because I could hire 2 young lawyers, teach them how to do this work. They would have, just give me a ton of cases and we'll work them through to the end. And he said, wow, that sounds like it could actually work. I ran the numbers. I said, let's do it. I hired 2 associates, and then that turned into 2 more, and that turned into 2 more. And meanwhile, I've got this, they're working their files, and it's steady work. We were literally making, I think we were making $65 an hour. So this was not a profitable enterprise, but the people who were locked up were getting serviced. Our young lawyers were learning. And I was able to do it. But in the afternoons or in the mornings, I could have them pick up criminal cases, and I could make money off of the arbitrage, the hours, right? And so that's where I started to double down into digital marketing and grow my firm. And now we don't take any more of those cases. We still have like 24 of them that we're working out. And those will soon be gone. But now we've got enough business, because we've been able to grow, to focus on just private pay clients. And we take the we take the assigned counsel cases now as like we're giving back to the community. And I've walked 2 men out of jail for murders they didn't do. Holding the guy's hand and walking them out of a courthouse is a pretty moving experience, and something that I highly recommend everybody do if they get a chance in their life. Did you do that through the Innocence Project? No, actually, both of my clients were rejected by the Innocence Project.
Really?
Because they were not DNA exonerations. One of them was one of them, unfortunately, was literally just false testimony by a competing drug gang, which actually came out. And then the other one was police officer misconduct. The detectives had gotten exculpatory information and buried it, and they had cell phone tower pings from a cell phone that was stolen by the actual murderer that was not near, and our client was 30 minutes away in another town, and we could confirm that. And that actually wound up a former FBI forensic examiner actually helped exonerate those two guys. And there's a whole 1983 action going on right now. Marquise is a good friend of mine, but to be with his family and walk him out of jail, it's a feeling I'll never forget.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's amazing work too. Like, I always look at what you do, and I've said this before about criminal defense, like the stakes are so much higher, right? And when you talk about prosecutorial misconduct or police misconduct, like their ethical codes are, if you have evidence, it needs to be turned over, especially if it's exculpatory, right? But to bury it.
I want to tell you, I mean, this morning, one of my lawyers came back from court, and he's jumping up and down. He's like, the police destroyed the body cams. It's been 45 days and they destroyed the body cams. And so now we don't have any ability to tell the tone or the tenor or the thought process of the statement that was supposedly made to this police officer about a domestic violence situation. And we're like, we got to fight this. I mean, it's amazing to me how often, like Chris Rock says, man, your police, you got to do your job right. You can't take chances. You can't just sometimes crash the plane into the side of the mountain like an airplane pilot can't do. Like, we need the best of the best in those roles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, with attorneys like you and some of the other criminal defense attorneys that I've had on the show, where because you're not the walk in the hallway with the baggy pants plea bargaining type of situation. You know that meme that goes around with like, if this is your lawyer, you're going to jail.
I actually just filmed one of those in my studio of, here's 10 things. If your lawyer does this, you're going to jail. Like, if your lawyer has an @AOL.com email address, you're going to jail.
That's hilarious.
You know what's funny? I heard you say on the Law Firm Blueprint, just to switch gears for 1 second, that you had a vendor who was pitching you and he had an AOL or an Optimum Online email extension. And you told the guy, look, I can't do business with you because you got to bare minimum. Oh, you had a Gmail. I'm like, who's going to take you seriously? And I'm the same way. Like, I look at that, I go, somebody hands me a business card and I see AOL on and I go, oh my God, this person doesn't know technology at all. Like with that, I have to be worried about every single thing now.
Yeah, I mean, it's serious. I mean, look, the reality is because of things like Apple and how well designed their products are and the ubiquity of Target as a place to buy things, the consumer nowadays appreciates and expects the best design possible. I mean, we're constantly upgrading our website. We're going to, we won an award. We won an award this year by Lawyerist for our website design. That came out in April. We're about to launch a brand new design this week. Like we liked that design 2 years ago when we launched it, but we can do better. And so we have another one coming out, and that helps us, show our experience and it helps us show our clients that they can have confidence in us because everything's buttoned up. That's important.
Well, it's funny too. Like, we're going through a redesign right now, and you don't realize, people don't realize, I think maybe even the attorneys that listen to this, that there's a difference between websites that were built on a design from 2 years ago to the stuff you see today. Right. So yeah, you got to do it pretty frequently. It's expensive. It's time intensive. It's not cheap by any means, but so yeah, I think that it's all part and parcel with, you're a business person, right? So you see the end game looks differently than the person that's in the files. Right. And that distinction is key. Your dad and you together probably make a very powerful duo because you need somebody that's literally that into lawyering.
Right.
Right. So it's funny. I love this trial guy that started with me. Like, man, we talk about cases and I get excited from the business perspective of the level of service he's delivering on the cases he's handling. That's what excites me. And I say to him, look, man, I'm here if you want to bounce ideas, but I trust you implicitly on the lawyering that you're doing. Like, but you kind of need both, right? Your dad you're helping your dad's legacy by giving it a business framework for him to be the rock star he is at making law.
Right.
Super impressive. Super impressive. So you end up complementing each other's legacy. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And when he retires, I'm going to have to fill it with 3 or 4 other lawyers to be able to fill that spot. But
you might want to start that search now. I've
been doing it for years. I've been doing it for years. In fact, it's nearly impossible for me to find somebody who's my age who is able to step in and do that role. So instead, we're growing it from within. I'm going to stick around. I've already announced my departure date to my office. I do a State of the Union type speech every December before we close for the holidays. And so everybody's there. And I announced this year, this is my 10th, and I have 9 more after this. And then somebody else will be taking over and doing this. So it's holding me accountable. This year it'll be my 9th, and I'll have 8 more to go. And I'm going to grow these people in that time period, and then hand them the keys and say sayonara.
Yeah. So before we switch, I would say one thing with the criminal mastermind. As somebody, I'm part of one that's virtual. Jules and I belong to it. Pilma. We just do the virtual one. I've gone to their summit, and then I do these other masterminds. Maybe it's just because I do have ADD. My discipline for attention in the virtual space is far less than if I have to get on a plane and I'm locked in a room for a day and a half. And man, as a business owner, I walk out of that stuff. I'm like, if you want to add another day and it increased my cost by 30%, you got me 4 times a year. Because there's something magical about being in the room with those people, right? I think you're going to DC. You going to the Fisher Mastermind in DC?
I plan to, yeah. I plan to. But here's the thing. You and I were weirdos, right? We are in that business thing. Yeah. Most of the people that are in my mastermind are just dipping their toe into the business side of things. Right. You know, they're 10% in. They're not 100% in like us. So if I were to say, hey, we need to get you into a room, they'd be like, look, I got to try a case. Right. I got to prep a brief. I got to deal with my intakes. I can't get away for 48 hours. I just can't do it. You and I can because we're the business side of things and we can structure our schedule that way. But when you're deep in the weeds, like the people that benefit from my program, it's hard to get away. That's why we're slowly getting to that. Like we're just now starting to do afternoon long sessions where we bring in someone to work on culture or defining your core values, that type of thing. That'll be a 3-hour session. I'd love to do that in person, but it's impossible with the people that I have a master because they're starting their growth rates. They're in the $1 to 1 million range. And most of them are on the dollar side.
Gotcha. So
because
they don't have
most criminal defense lawyers don't get paid for their trials. I mean, of those 17 trials that I did, I got paid that I lost. I only got paid for 2 of them.
Really?
I did them for free because that's what was a lot of it is my business model is fuck you. That's why, I'll try a case. Fuck you. That's why.
Right. We're very similar like that. We're very similar like that.
You don't think I'll try this case for nothing and just to make you do the work? And all right, I'll do it. Let's go to war. I have no problem doing that. And it's not a business model. It's not. I know what I do. I apply business principles to it, but it's more of a passion of who we are as people. And I have a bunch of weirdo lawyers that are passionate about this area of law.
Right. Yeah, look, but I think that the world needs more of that, right? It's too easy for law firms to sign up cases. And, I had a surgical case. Woman comes to me, she's on the verge of tears. She's like, this lawyer's telling me I got to take $7,500. I had surgery to this knee and it was $100 policy. So I said, I signed up the case. I take it from the other law firm. 90 days of hard work. We get the full policy tender. Then the lawyer is like, hey, what about my fee? I'm like, my client wanted to file a grievance against you, right? Like I'll do the right thing, but give me a break. You were trying to force a settlement down the woman's throat. Right. So, but the world needs more people that have that. You try me, see if you want to do that. Let's see if we're going to do that. That's really what the world needs in our spaces anyway, right? In the PI and criminal defense space. I think you got to be willing to, our practices are such that same thing, the carriers or the prosecutors are always going to respond the same way. If you're willing to try the case, the likelihood is most cases won't have to be tried and you'll still get the right result because they know you will try it if it needs be, versus the firms that tracking everything. I don't know if the DA's office does this, but I know that the insurance companies, they are data heavy and they've been using AI for the last decade. So they'll tell you how much money they paid to every firm to the penny, which cases are taking verdicts, what the outcomes of those verdicts are. They know their percentages. And when the firms start to change models in the reverse direction, we used to be a trial firm, but we get good money. They start to chip away at those dollars. That's what I'm seeing. So I think the world needs, listen, we became lawyers. The courts are there for us to do that dance. Right. And if you're in a space where that dance is part of it, do the whole dance. Right? Do the whole dance. Like that's your business. That's what you got to do. So, shift gears for me. What was the impetus behind the law firm Blueprint? How did you meet Seth, by the way?
So, it's funny. I met Seth, I think through a text message. He was at a business development marketing thing for criminal defense lawyers, run by Bubba Head down in Georgia. Bubba's a great legend in the DUI space, especially in the DUI marketing space. Bubba's a mentor and a friend. And he was down there, and a couple of my friends met Seth, and they were like, you got to meet this guy. He's just like you. And so when I met him, then I was at a conference and we sat down and we talked to each other, and it just, and it's with Seth, it's like a ball rolling downhill, just picks up speed. And so we become friendly over all these years. So that's how I got to meet him. So law firm Blueprint really happened. I was a big contributor early on in the maximum lawyer community, helping people out, but that was more question based. And I knew I had all of these systems that were in my firm that I was using. And so I developed a law firm, a lawyers group on Facebook called Systemizing Your Law Firm for Success. And I just did it because I was like, I'm going to publish my systems and I'll make them generic. I'll take out the specific stuff to our firm. I'll put them out there, and then people can just copy and paste them because I know people are lazy. They don't want to have to write them from scratch. Right. So I put that out there. And then that was going, and, we were up to like 1,000 people in the group, and I kept posting systems. And Seth and I, during COVID, were just looking for an outlet. We're both at home trying to keep the lights on. And we started doing this podcast, and it just sort of took off. And then I was like, well, it's not really systemizing your law firm. It's really just a law firm blueprint. This is the stuff that you need. So we talked about the name, and we changed the name of the group and changed the name of the podcast. And that's really how it just all sort of happened. And I keep posting stuff in that group to let people, and it's amazing to me how many times you let people into the group, and then all of a sudden you see comments on posts from 3 years ago. This is the system I've been looking for. It's so easy now. That type of thing. So I've maxed out on all the systems that I can do, but there's still a commentary going on, and we do the show every week. And it's a lot of fun.
Your show, that podcast, is probably one of the top listens that I listen to in my rotation. I'm a big podcast guy, but as I'm in scaling mode, right? You go past a certain number, and then it's just a matter of you just do more of certain things, and you try not to break too many things. But I was listening to you guys late at night one night. It was like 9 o'clock. I was waiting to pick my daughter up. Well, look, that's late for me, and I was waiting to pick my daughter up from singing. So I go to pick my daughter up from singing, and I'm sitting in the parking lot, and I literally had just had the experience of I had to end a relationship with a defense attorney who was working for me, right? I came from the defense world. And lo and behold, you guys are talking about something on the recruiting and hiring side post-COVID, and Seth says, yeah, we've tried the bringing in the defense sided attorneys. And as a general rule of thumb, there's like an 80% fail rate. And I loved it because I was like, that's the value I get from leaving my desk to go to masterminds. I get the same thing from your content, your podcasts. And it's that validation, right? Like I went to a mastermind recently, and it was several 8-figure law firms. And that's the trajectory I'm on. And I stood up and I gave them a complete autopsy of my firm. And it's really vulnerable to put everything up, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? So I put everything up on a big slideshow, and they're like, okay, so what do you want to ask us? I'm like, I'm questioning my sanity at this point. Like, am I in the right space? And they're like, yeah, 100%. You go through exactly where you are at the stage you're at. And it's that validation, like you said earlier, you're not alone. I have a lot of peer groups that I'm in, but that's what I get from it's weird. You guys put out content, and a lot of the stuff I'm struggling with, it's talking to me just literally in the moment.
But, what's funny to me is that, Seth and I text message back and forth issues that come up so that we can remember to talk about them on the show.
Gotcha.
And inevitably, we're texting each other the issue we're going to talk about this week, and we're both going through it at the exact same time. So I think a lot of us are going through the same thing. I got an issue I just texted him about. We have been very secure in our team over the last couple of years, and we've lost 2 people in the last year after 5 months with us. Both had just recently graduated college, had never worked in an office before. One worked as a babysitter, like a nanny type thing, and one had worked in an ice cream shop. And after 5 months, they both give their notice to leave, and didn't even have another job lined up. They were still living at home and that type of thing. And I think it's because they had unreasonable expectations of what a working life is. And so I said, look, we need to onboard with, this is how the next 50 years of your life is going to be. If you're opting for an office job, sometimes it means you sit in a cubicle all day and you're on the phone and you're on Zooms, but there's not a lot of, chatting with your neighbor. You're getting your work done. And I think that's where we failed as an employer. So I turned to my firm administrator. I said, as we're recruiting, let's start bringing this up in the process. Talk to them about these things so we can identify people that are not suited for us being their first job, because we don't want to train somebody and lose them in 4 months. But that's
a big loss.
That's basically, it's, the whole, everything we just did is just wasted.
I think a lot of that. I just did an interview today, and I have another one in I think in a half an hour. But I did an interview today, and it was a young female attorney, and she's excellent. She's been doing a lot of per diem for us, and I had to do exactly the same thing. That's why it's so funny, and maybe it just comes from, we're all around the same age. We've owned firms for around the same time, and they're all around the same scale, right? Between me, you, Seth, Ryan, all of these guys and ladies out there. But so I asked her, what do you attribute this unrealistic expectation to? And she said, it's social media influencer economy. There is a disconnect between reality and the fact that everybody thinks because they own a cell phone, they're going to make $1 bajillion and leave at 5:01 every day, right? So now I'm doing the same thing. I'm talking about it when I'm interviewing attorneys. Like, if you want to look at an attorney like Jay or Seth, and you want to make what Jay or Seth is making, then you better be willing to do what Jay or Seth did to get there. And I know it was not knocking off at 5:01 every day.
Tom, my first job, I was making $100 a day as a public defender. I did that for 2 years to get a ton of experience, 18 months to get a ton of experience. I had friends at that time, this was back in the late 90s, that were making $100,000 plus. I made $25,000 my first year as a lawyer. That's not a lot of money to live off of. Now, luckily, I had a lot of friends in the bars. I could go out every night and drink for free. It was no big deal. But that's the thing. I found things. I had somebody who left us who asked to double her salary from an entry-level job that had been with us for 4 months. And the job isn't worth double. It's just not. So we say, look, that's not in the cards for you. This job is not worth what we're paying. It's not worth $90,000 a year. I'm sorry. It's not a $90,000 a year job. It's a $45,000 a year. That's why that's what we offered you. And she's like, well, I need $95,000 to be able to move out of my house and have a social life. And I said, okay, go with God. You may want to pick up a second job like everybody else I know who's 23 years old. And gets a job waiting tables. That's what I did. I had 2 jobs when I went to law school. I bartended 3 nights a week, and I worked in a law firm 5 days a week. And I went to law school at night 4 nights a week. I mean, I was hustling. And I think because of social media, people are so used to seeing what other people are doing and getting that they think that they're missing out. But really, you have the time to grind now as a young person. You should be grinding as much as possible. That's why I got my kids in the other room.
Yeah, listen, and a lot of social media is curated and fake, right? So the bottom line is this, that it does take that hustle. And you're going to, like, before I got married, I was in practice for 10 years. I worked 7 days a week. 7 days a week, and perfecting the business side and learning the business side and doing the legal work, right? So social media has created this unrealistic expectation that A, it's easy to get rich, and B, I should have this, and it's unrealistic in the time frame or the manner in which it's achieved.
They don't let their kids see any adversity. They knock down all the barriers. I think that's a problem.
I do too.
I think social media is, I got to tell you, we do a significant number of juvenile defense cases. My oldest child is 14. She just got a cell phone last month for the first time because she's going into high school and it's a couple of towns away and she needs, so we wanted to give her that. She does not have social media until she goes to college. We want no part of that, because that's all the kids that get in trouble that we wind up representing. 99% of them, social media has played a role in why they're being arrested. All these kids that we get involved with, from Greenwich, Connecticut, very expensive, to inner city Bridgeport, very poor, we're seeing people documenting crimes on Snapchat. And sharing them, taking videos, sharing pictures. I mean, young men and women sending sexually oriented material back and forth to them, to each other. And then somebody gets arrested because I wish
child pornography at that point.
And I wish I could turn off the camera on my daughter's phone, but we've had a number of lectures and that type of thing. And we lock down who can contact her, and other parents in my neighborhood say, you're crazy. Why are you doing this? I'm like, well, guess what? I trust my daughter. I do a lot. But I don't trust other people's kids. And so I'm going to protect my daughter, and my sons. My sons, they just have Apple Watches, the 12-year-old and the 10-year-old, because they don't need the phone yet. So I'll tell you, if we look at the last 100 juvenile cases, 100 kids we've represented under 17 in our state, 99% of them, the phone played some role in their arrest.
Wow. That's a sobering, that's a sobering statistic. And I will tell you that I've been studying the science of this because I have a 14-year-old, right? And, she stays glued to the phone, and I'm constantly turning it off on her because I have a control app on my phone. So I did the deep dive on it, and basically the phones act on the same receptors in your brain as cocaine. Right. It becomes a dopamine freaking addiction, and these kids' brains are not fully formed yet. So I have great concern over it, and I am very much on top of my daughter. We have complete unfettered access to her phone at the drop of a dime, and if we hear no, it gets shut off and taken away for a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is. So
we charge our kids have to charge their devices in our bedroom at night. 10 o'clock, they go on the charger.
We do that too. We do that too.
I'm always so grateful I at least had a portion of my childhood without these kinds of technologies. I mean, we started getting phones early high school, but even then social media wasn't anywhere close to what it is now. So I'm always so thankful I had that little bit.
But you bring up something that's really interesting too, Jay, the impact of this in the recruiting and business aspect. Juliet and I both know people that were at a firm. They were good. They were promising. They were young. but they had these unrealistic expectations created by X. That person then goes on to move on to what they think is the fix, the better place. 2 months later, they're not working.
Right.
2 months later, they're back in motion. And I'm like, man, we're going to see so much disjointed employment history. And I don't care what the anonymous people say on LinkedIn or on Fishbowl. When I'm looking at resumes, if I see a disjointed history, that's sending me signals. Just is, right? Like a jump type of thing. So listen, I want to be respectful of your time, but I do want to give you the opportunity. Tell me what FirmFlex is, because I know we talked about it once. I think you were at a trade show I was at or a conference I was at. What is FirmFlex?
Well, actually, this is really interesting that you bring it up. With my mastermind growing as fast as it is, and my partner in FirmFlex due to have a baby in the next couple of weeks, and the other partner in FirmFlex really taking off. He's my brother. He does all of our website design, and his company's taking off. We decided in the last 24 hours, we're shutting it down.
Wait,
really?
So it's a social media marketing platform for lawyers. What we were doing is we had a platform where you could log in. We had all your social media posts across LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all of those things that our professional writers would write them, source all the images, create all the hashtags, and you could literally log in and just press publish and schedule your publishes. So you really could just have somebody else doing it, but you could maintain some granular control without having to do it. And we followed all of the best practices for social media. Whatever the day of the week is, we would have a relevant image. And we also had stuff about PI and trust and estates and family law and criminal law. And we had lawyers all over the country who were using it and loving it. But we just decided, while it was a profitable business, none of us had the passion for it anymore with everything that was going on. And so we just decided that we're gonna shutter that product. We're gonna keep the business open. We have an AI product that we think can turn into something really kind of unique and innovative. So we're working on that with some R&D, and we'll see what happens towards the end of the year.
Did you ever think of selling that product off, or even the mailing list, like to somebody that's opening a new social media management company, which I'll make an announcement in 2 seconds on?
I'd be happy to. In fact, there's a lot of opportunity there if somebody wants to do it. We just, none of the partners in the business have the passion for it. We started it in September of 2019. The world was a lot different back then. And just over 5 years, our passions have changed, but it's a viable business. It's got all the technology there that we have in place. We've got a mailing list of 9,000 lawyers that we've interacted with over.
And you got the writers, you got all of that. I'll tell you, Jules, can I make an announcement?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So 4 weeks ago, in the middle of the podcast, who were we interviewing, Jules?
Oh, it was like 6 weeks ago.
6 weeks ago, we're interviewing somebody who's talking about the entrepreneurial seizure that they had. And I can notice something with Juliet. So after the podcast wraps up, I'm like, Jules, come into my office. I said, what are you doing? She's like, nothing. She got all nervous. And I said, Jules, I've been doing cross-examination for a long time. You got 1 foot in, 1 foot out. How long do I have with you? She's like, 6 weeks. She's opening a social media management company. We were going to announce it on the show anyway, because she's going to continue on. She's going to continue on doing my podcast, doing my social. She's got clientele. But Jules, get Jay's number, and maybe there's an opportunity to look at that as a turnkey type of opportunity for you.
We have a platform already built out, and it's really kind of unique in that the lawyers, they log in, they connect their social platforms with our software, and then they can literally you get a calendar in front of you. There'll be multiple posts a day at different times. You can just approve, edit, and change or disapprove it, and we would build stuff out 2 weeks at a time. It's real simple. And the platform that we have has, hundreds of thousands of stock photographs already in there. It's a cool platform that my brother with his technical wizardry was able to put together. So if we can help. Yeah,
I remember seeing a demo. So I think that after this, now that the cat's out of the bag, Jules, sit
Yeah,
down,
I would
talk to
literally
Jay
love
and,
to talk
and
about
have a
this.
conversation and see what maybe there's something there,
Yeah, what are the odds? I was not expecting you to say that you were closing it down, so I was like, "Ooh, okay, what happened there?"
I saw her writing furiously.
We have we offboard a bunch of clients. We have a few clients that we're still servicing, that we're paying thousands of dollars a year for this stuff, and we just said, hey, look, we're going to give you back your money. We're not going to finish out the year. We want you to have a good experience, and we'll point you in the direction of something else. With AI now, people are sourcing their images differently and that type of thing. And our big expense was on the writing side because it was professional writers. But we have 5 years of posts that we could give access to. I mean, there's so much to repurpose there.
Even if just the mailing list, like there's value there. I hate to see you shudder it. And I know that Jules, who's a very aggressive, hungry personality, and I kind of take it as I'm a little flattered because she came to me. She was a little wee file clerk that I grew up with her parents. We went to high school together. So I kind of take it like I must have done something right because the kid is taking off and doing her own thing now. So I kind of, if there's any leg up, I can help her with, So anyway, I appreciate you telling us that, Jay. And I appreciate you coming on. For anybody that's listening to this, because I want to be respectful of your time, Jay. If you're in the criminal defense space, I mean, I know the pricing on this mastermind, the value is insane for what you're paying. And I would encourage you to reach out to Jay, go to the website. Jay, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about the criminal mastermind or anything you're working on?
So you can just go to thecriminalmastermind.com/appointments. There's plenty of opportunities there. Pick a slot on my schedule, do a discovery call or whatever you want. I've got some cool stuff I've been working on. If you got a minute, I'll stand up and I'll show you something.
Yeah, do it, man. I got plenty of time. I blocked this time for you.
I spent some time and I made all these decks of cards. So I got 52 cards in the decks, 52 video ideas, 52 referral marketing ideas, 52 social media posts, 52 systems you need, and 52 10-minute marketing ideas. But then this is the new thing I'm going to send out to all my members. When I print it out, I'll send you one. Just so you
absolutely. Let me know how much I owe you for that.
It's a huge calendar for 2025 that you can put on your wall and actually write out all of your focus for the month, and then all the days of the month what you're going to do to rock your goals. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I give to the members of my mastermind. I'm really psyched about some of these cool things because, I mean, shit, if I had these resources back 20 years ago, I would have accelerated my growth so much better and being just a better place. So I want to give this stuff away. But like all my members are getting cards every month now. I send them tons of gifts. Every time I find something cool, I ship it off to people. So that's what I'm all about. I reinvest everything in the mastermind. It's not about the money. It's all about what can I give these people to make their lives easier. That's what I'm saying.
I know how much it costs.
Off my law firm.
Yeah, and I know how much it costs. I mean, the amount of value that you're delivering. And I think I'm going to end the show on this note because when I was making the transition from the guy that was in every file and trying to figure out how to do the business, somebody said, what would happen if you died tomorrow? And the reality of that is your clients' lives will go on. And so you can make the time for what's important. Like I love the fact that there are trial dedicated experts. That's all they want to do is try cases. Those specialists are worth every penny and they will always be in demand because only 1% of attorneys actually try cases to verdict. But the other flip side of it is the ones that are struggling. That's why the mastermind is so important, right? Like I'm on trial on these big homicide cases or whatever, and every new client has to wait for me to be done with trial in a space where waiting is not really the best ideal scenario for a criminal defense client.
Tom, I'm going to tell you something. We changed as of January 1, 2023. We decided to staff our intake Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? We now open more business on Saturday and Sunday than we ever did during the week. Having people answering phones, being able to talk to an intake people and retain a lawyer on Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon has been life-changing for my firm.
Yeah.
Smart.
Because every other lawyer is having them leave a voicemail and they're calling them back on Monday. They already hired us Saturday night. And so all of those clients are gone. And all the lawyers that my lawyers run into, how do you guys keep getting clients? You know, what's going on at your firm? Every time I call somebody back, they tell me they don't need a lawyer. Like, yeah, because we scooped them up 24 hours ago, 48 hours.
And I will tell you, that's been my experience because I get a lot of calls in New York for criminal defense, right? And I don't do it. So a client will call me on a Saturday. I always respond because this is my network. They have access to my cell phone. They dial 911 from my cell phone. I'm getting out of wherever I am. I answer them. So very often, I then send the text to the person I have the relationship with and say, they need a lawyer right now. And those are the people that get the case because people aren't waiting till Monday. Good luck if you're on vacation and you don't have a mechanism, system, or person in place to get that case. No one's waiting for you. Nope. So I think that the criminal defense lawyers that are doing it, where you said they're just towing into the water, it's a brilliant opportunity to change the game, still provide high-level service. So I think what you're doing is awesome. And I appreciate you, Jay. Thank you for coming on. And if anybody's listening to this, just reach out to Jay on the Criminal Mastermind website or even on LinkedIn. He's active on LinkedIn. And we'll put all the links for all of that in the show notes. And anybody that's looking for social media marketing, Juliet's now in the game. Reach out to her on LinkedIn. Mention Lead Counsel, and she'll give you a special, discount deal.